Welcome to Playbook for Performance, the official podcast of Shawna Corden, the Joan of Arc for corporate healing and performance. Join the quest to make work fun again by preparing leadership for engaging workplaces. And now, your host.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Glad to have you here. So this week in the podcast, we're taking a little detour from our promised topic, and we're talking about making decisions. This is the time of year where we're going to be flooded with lots of opportunities for decision making, including elections, health insurance optimization. Some of your kids might be applying to colleges and things like that. There's a lot of things going around, and it's always helpful to analyze what is it that we use in terms of information to make decisions. So I have found in my years of working with thousands of clients that people tend to fall into four camps when it comes to making decisions. One is quickly, get it done as fast as possible. I have decision fatigue. I can't be bothered with all of the details that might be involved in this. I really got to get going so I can move to the next thing on my plate. So quick decision maker, may or may not be intuitive or may do minimal amount of research. The second is those who like to socialize. They like to discuss it with lots of other people. They want to get lots of feedback and perspectives. And in general, they just use this as their own personal research in order to figure out how to make decisions. The next group is the one that are the people pleasers. They tend to look at any given situation and say, how can I create the greatest amount of peace for others? So they want to make other people happy. They may also look at it as, well, which has the least amount of effort, upset, concern, things like that. They want to make other people happy and in general make themselves happy too. And then the fourth group is really like my engineers of the world. They want to calculate. They want to weigh the evidence. They want to do lots and lots of research. Even if it's a relatively minor decision that's not very expensive or doesn't have long-term consequences, they will pour lots and lots of time into doing research because it's what makes them feel most comfortable. So, which one of the four are you? And you might find that it varies. It might change depending on the amount of stress that you're under. You may find it changes depending on the amount of time that's available for you to make the decision. And it might be different at work versus home. All of those are okay. We're just trying to create some awareness for you about what that looks like. Now, what are the pros and cons of each of these decision-making styles? Well, obviously, when it comes to quick, you get it done. Now, if you're the kind of person that regrets decisions made or thinks about decisions you have made and how you could have made them better, this might be a drawback for you in that you spend lots of time coming up with ideas of how you could have done it better, but in reality, even if you took as much time as possible to make the decision, given your personality type, you probably would regret just the same or question just the same. So in that case, I would say making a decision quickly kind of shortens the front end time that's associated with it. And because you're still going to have the regret or questioning piece, regardless of how much time you use to make the decision. Okay, that's been my experience with these folks. Again, ask yourself, is that true? The pros and cons with the socializing, I would say it's great to get lots of input. It's great to get different perspectives. I can't tell you how many times I've been facilitating a mastermind or working with a one-on-one with a client, and I say, have you thought about this? Right? That's part of my job, is to offer other perspectives or look at blind spots, and they go, oh, I never thought of it that way. Boy, you just saved me from a potentially fatal decision. Not really fatal, but you know what I mean. So that can be very helpful as long as you're the kind of person who is not overly swayed by others' opinions, which falls into our next camp, the people pleaser camp. So if you feel like you're not overly swayed, if you're consulting with the right people who don't have skin in the game in one way or another, it can be very good. The bad part is generally people have an agenda for you. They want you to behave a particular way because it fits their image of you. It fits what they believe someone of your status should do. It, votes their way, whatever it might be. And so be sure that the people that you're consulting with don't have some kind of skin in the game. They truly are just trying to help you make a decision. And that's one of the best things about having a personal coach is their agenda is your agenda. They don't care what you do. I mean, they care about what's best for you, but they don't have an agenda for you. They don't have an expectation about how you're supposed to behave. So there's the pros and cons there. When it comes to those that are people pleasers, obviously, if you're weighing everyone else's happiness above your own in order to keep the peace, that could set you up for some long-term resentment, disappointment, may not be the best decision overall. So those are some things to think about. However, if you're the kind of person who is content when all of your family members are content and you're not resentful about that, that could be very good for you. So consider that. And this is where I think maybe that Susie Welch sort of 10-10-10 idea could be really helpful for you, considering the impact of your decision 10 hours from now, 10 months from now, 10 years from now. I highly encourage you to go out and check out Susie Welch's TED Talk on this topic. I think it's called the 10-10-10 Rule. And she has a book by the same title that has some really good anecdotes describing this concept and what it could do for you. And then finally, my last group, the pros and cons of weighing the evidence. Obviously, evidence is super helpful. This group tends to overanalyze. So the term analysis paralysis was created for this group. So if you are one of these people, give yourself some boundaries. I'm going to check 10 websites. I'm going to ask 10 opinions. I'm going to take 10 hours. I'm going to take 10 days. I'm going to read 10 articles about it, that kind of thing. Give yourself some boundaries, because if you find that you don't, you could extend that decision-making time period forever and not really get things done. So, moving on, I want to introduce this concept of sunk cost and the fallacy behind it. Sometimes people are making decisions based on what they've already invested. Now, the famous kind of business case study about this is the Concorde Airlines. They had spent so much money in this airline concept. I think the data shows that they I've forgotten the amount of money. It is an insane amount of money that they had invested. Because they had put so much into it, they continued rather than canceling the project. Now, I went to a conference, and Diana Kandar, hopefully I'm getting her name right, spoke, and she did this amazing presentation. She was a very good speaker. I highly recommend her. Talking about the difference between these people who are constantly adapting and evolving and growing. And she used the example of Vanilla Ice, no offense, and Snoop Dogg, and how Snoop Dogg has just constantly evolved. And this was before he did the Olympics thing. And that how he looked into buying a hockey team. He's doing wine. He's doing CBD. He's got a youth football team. I mean, just everywhere. Really constant entrepreneur, versus Kid Rock kind of stayed in his lane. I think he does real estate now, but he did his original tour and then he did the comeback tour. So it was kind of interesting talking about that evolution. And then she talked about Jeff Bezos being the ultimate zombie killer, and zombies being basically things that were sunk costs that he just decided, instead of continuing on with it because he put so much into it, he killed it. Hence these things being called zombies. And she gave multiple examples of tremendously successful business concepts that he had invested in and they didn't perform well, so he killed them. But there are successful iterations of all of those businesses today. You know, things like PayPal and Venmo and, one of the examples that she used is Amazon had their own digital phone, whatever it was called. And the most popular version of that or feature of that phone was, can anybody tell me? Bueller. The answer is Alexa. So killed the phone, took all of the resources that were involved with the phone, put them on Alexa, doubled down. Everybody knows who Alexa is, right? And so think about those things. Are you making decisions based on what you've already invested, either emotionally, financially, maybe it's sweat equity? And is that really appropriate? So, do you want to be a zombie killer? Do you want to be a Snoop Dogg? Do you want to be a Vanilla Ice? So how can you create some clarity to ensure you're not relying on this bias about sunk costs and the fallacies there? You could use some tools that get everything out in the open. You could have some decision criteria. For example, I worked with a client years ago who was trying to decide between two jobs. We listed all the criteria in terms of autonomy, salary, vacation time, upward mobility, yada, yada, yada. We put it all down there. That's not good enough because not every piece of criteria is equally weighted. So autonomy might be way more important than the number of vacation days and vice versa. So we had to apply some weighting to it. But then as it came down to it, he was kind of hemming and hawing still. And I was like, well, what's this about? Well, clearly he had an emotional preference for one side. He was trying to kind of nudge the numbers a little bit higher in some of the areas and be a little easier in his grading. And I was like, is this because you really just want this one? Let's find out why. Let's dig deeper. Let's find out what's behind that. So again, you've got to create some awareness about what is the bias that you have. And it could be like, this job just sounds sexier, or I'm ready for a change, or I liked the person that interviewed me, or the carpet's cleaner. I mean, it could be all kinds of foolish nonsense in terms of criteria, in terms of making a decision, but it had an impact on you. So name that impact, name that bias to say, I know this is silly. I know this is ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. It has, zero impact in the 10-10-10 criteria, anything like that. But just name it. Just name it. And it may take some of the gloss off it. Or it may reveal something deep down that's like, I have always wanted to do this thing, or I've always wanted to have this. And it might be something you decide to ask for when it comes to the final negotiations of whatever it is that you're going for. So think about that too. Now, it's easy to come up with decision criteria. I would say if you're not sure about this, Google it, use AI. You can figure out some ways to make this criteria. It could be longevity. It could be appeal. It could be, earth. Lots of things that you might want to use as your criteria in your decision making so that you're not overly biased about one thing or another. So, what's in it for you when it comes to this? Dropping the endeavor. What do you need if it is indeed a sunk cost situation? So you might want to think about opportunity costs, but it could be something more primal. It could be, do you need permission? Have you been putting yourself into this for so long? It's part of your identity. You just can't imagine a possibility otherwise. Well, you might need to play with that a little bit. You might need to marinate in it. You might have to have a trial. You might need to do some other experiences. Laura Berman Fortgang wrote a great book called Now What? 90 Days to a New Life Direction. And one of the assignments in this book that I think is so helpful is we tend to romanticize, particular professions or things like that. Geographies, you name it. Do some interviews. Pick 5 people who are professional dog walkers and interview them. What do you love about your job? What do you hate about your job? What are the hours that you keep? Things like that. Just so that you are walking into a situation with your eyes wide open and you're not romanticizing what's going on. Sometimes we need to acknowledge, I'm tired. I need a break. I need something different. I'm not 20 anymore, whatever it might be. You might want to also think about, if I paused this, if I canceled this project, if I quit this job, if I quit this relationship, whatever it might be, if you didn't, what are the opportunity costs, right? What does this allow you to lean into if you pause or stop this other endeavor? So this could be something like, I'd have more time to pursue this hobby, or I could get around to volunteering at that place I've always wanted to go to, or I could go back to school. I could spend more time with my aging parents. I could spend more time parenting my children who are glued to their digital devices. All kinds of things. So if you stopped this, if you stopped investing in the Concorde Air program, what could you spend that money on instead? So think about that. And then what is possible? Sometimes it's a hybrid. It's not always black and white. It's not always stop this, start this. It could be part-time. It could be job share. It could be a vacation. It could be a sabbatical. It could be all kinds of things. So think about the possibilities. So often when I was an internal coach, people would come to me and say, I think I want to quit. I want to go to this other job. And sometimes I would say, well, I'm not going to coach you to leave the company since I'm getting paid by this company to coach you. And that's a whole nother story. We can talk about that. Eventually I did coach on this, but it was like, well, what is it you really want to do? Well, I really want to do more social media. Have you considered proposing this to be a percentage of your job? Well, no, I never thought about that. They'd never let me do it. Are you sure? Have you asked? Sometimes it's growing a very small slice of our pie chart into a bigger piece. And that's enough to kind of scratch that itch and satisfy where you really want to be. It could be that you adjust the hours that you're in the office. It could be a work from home day. It could be, or a work from the office day. Thinking about those things in terms of the possibilities can be super helpful in making those decisions, getting more data, making sure you don't have bias, and really looking at that whole sunk cost idea. So, homework for this week, because coaching without action is just entertainment. Consider a trial. Whatever it is, this decision that you need to make, can you rent it? Can you borrow it? Can you try it on for size? Is there a way to test this theory that you have? Create a hypothesis. What do you think the result will be? Test for it. Again, from Laura Berman Fortgang's Now What book, there's a fabulous exercise that's called 5 Works of Fiction. And it's this free-form kind of journaling exercise where you, in the case of the book, we're really looking at my ambition is to become a dog walker. How am I going to get to where I am now, to where I want to be? I'm going to write 5 little short stories of fiction that get me to dog walker status. Okay. Instead of this case where we want to be the dog walker, think about the decisions you need to make with the different outcomes. What would it be like if you voted this way and you didn't vote the other way? What would it be like if you opted for that high definition plasma television and put it in the living room? What would it be if you spent that money on a vacation instead? Consider the different ideas and play with it. Let your imagination run wild with this, because it'll give you an idea of possibility, and you can reverse engineer it to say, how do I get from here to there? Okay. Consider Googling some cost-benefit analysis, simple details about decisions. And consider something like the 10-10-10 rule about making these decisions. And then finally, depending on if you're a people pleaser or not, consider working with a mentor who has nothing to gain, or a personal coach, someone who just wants the best for you, isn't selling the product you're considering. Seek a mentor with nothing to gain to ask for their opinion, and be sure to let them know ahead of time, I'm not necessarily going to make the decision you offer, but I would like your input on blank. My husband has this habit of, when we go to a restaurant, I will say, what do you recommend? But my husband makes the statement first, I'm not necessarily going to recommend this, but I'd like to know what your favorite thing is on the menu. So he feels like he's not being rude if, like, he says, oh, I don't want that. But feel free to put that preface in there to say, I'm not necessarily going to do what you suggest, but I'd like to know your input about this major decision that I'm considering making and what you think about it. So hopefully this has been a helpful exercise, reviewing, how people tend to make decisions, what sunk cost fallacy is all about, and recognizing if you are in the trap of going along with the decision because of the sunk cost, whether it's a relationship, a job, a career. Think about, you have other options. What is it that you might consider instead? So if we can help you out in terms of a conversation about these things, if we can be your ad hoc coach, we would love to do that for you. You can reach us at Shawna at shawnacorden.com. We also work with teams that are evaluating opportunities, things like that. So we'd love to be here to help you out. Next time, I promise we'll get back to remote team management and best practices for that. But until next time, take good care. Please give us a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube and you're following us, those 5-star reviews really help us out and get the message out to others. So again, until next time, take good care.
Thank you for listening to Playbook for Performance. To learn more about Shawna Corden, her consulting programs and tools, please visit her website at shawnacorden.com and follow us on social media at Shawna Corden.